What we need most, I believe, in leadership in 2026 is that it needs to meet fundamental human needs that we are not meeting today, and that is safety and that is belonging. And I truly believe that to the core of my being, that until we put our time and energy as leaders into safety and belonging, we are not going to get to that place.
Welcome to She Coaches Coaches, the podcast where we have thoughtful, honest conversations about what it really takes to build a thriving coaching business. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and before building my business, I spent years as a senior corporate leader. Now, today, I work with coaches who are smart, well-trained, and deeply capable, and who want clarity about how to grow in a way that feels aligned and financially sustainable. On this show, I sit down with successful coaches to explore the real decisions behind their success, how they got started, what shifted as they grew, and the mindset and business choices that helped them gain momentum without burning out. Whether you're early in your coaching journey or refining a business you've already built, She Coaches Coaches is here to offer perspective, confidence, and grounded insight to support your next chapter. To learn more about how I work with people, go to my website, stepintosuccessnow.com. And now let's dive in. Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and I would love to welcome a new guest, Sarah Doyle. Let me tell you a little bit about Sarah before we dive into the conversation. She is an executive leadership coach, speaker, and founder of Coach for Success. As a former communications executive and now an internationally accredited coach, she helps high-performing women step into senior leadership with grounded presence, strategic influence, and authenticity. Her neuroscience-backed programs leverage over 400 hours of specialized training in NLP, timeline therapy, somatic coaching, and breathwork. Sarah is the creator of the signature leadership presence method, which equips leaders to inspire trust, shape culture, and lead with embodied inner authority. Sarah, welcome to the show. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you, Candy. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
What is so exciting for me is that as I'm reading your bio, I'm like, I know those kinds of individuals. I know those high performing women who are either in senior leadership, stepping into the C-suite, or moving into senior leadership. And I love it in combination with that phrase, grounded presence. Talk to me about grounded presence and what that means for you.
Well, I think that it's a little bit of everything because until we actually understand how to have grounded presence in our day to day and in our leadership, we're kind of unanchored or untethered. And I think that that is a very difficult place to lead from. And I speak from experience of rising through the ranks. I spent over 20 years in the corporate world. And, there wasn't a course I could have taken that would have taught me how to actually lead from a place of presence and, that inner authority that I talk so frequently to my clients about. And those are the tools that I found very helpful. And now I've gone on to actually refine and develop so that I can share that with others and help them find that same anchoring.
There was two pieces there. Sometimes they go together and sometimes they don't. Being grounded and then being authentic. And I know what it's like to be in the room with us. I was going to say seriously, but it's more intentionally grounded leader and the tone that that brings to the leadership team and to any event that is happening. The piece that I haven't seen as often is the authenticity piece. That's a really interesting combination. Do you think that corporate and leadership and organizations are moving more in that direction? And what do you think is making that?
I think that that's a challenging question to answer with any sort of certainty. So I'm going to have to answer it based on my observations. And I would say that what we see most in the world today is very performative. Okay. So we do see grounded presence, we do see intentional leadership. But we also have a high dose of performance behind it. And performance is the opposite of authenticity. So, performance is the wearing of the mask, it's putting on the persona, it's getting dressed up so that we can imagine that we are the leader and we're acting like the leader. What I'm proposing is a style of leadership that drops all of that. It's a style of leadership that we actually have to be who we really are. And this level of authenticity, it's very disarming because we're so used to seeing performance and we're so used to seeing the posturing. And I've sat in many a boardroom meeting where that's all you see is this posturing, this managing of perceptions. And if anything, people are just acting their roles. And so when you finally get into a room with people who are being real and they're dropping the mask and they're having real conversations and they're being authentic and they're leading from a place of presence, the conversation shifts. The decisions are different. The perspectives that people bring are different. The energy is different.
There is one thing that you haven't said, and I think it is important in this area, and that to take that mask off, especially if you're in the corporate environment, given all of the things going on these days, that can take a real element of courage. How does that impact the work you do? Just that word courage, the essence of courage.
I love that you use that word. It's almost like you're reading my mind. So, one of the programs that I run and I have quite a bit of participation in is all around courageous conversations. And it's about stepping into that space where we actually aren't in control of the conversation. We're going to navigate this dance with another human being and we're going to go in there open minded. We're going to go open in and be curious and non judgmental and we're going to see where the conversation goes. And it's essentially what you and I are doing because there's a lot of courage in this conversation. I don't know what you're going to ask me, but I also believe that it's going to be magical. There's going to be something here that there's going to be an aha. Somebody's going to have a moment of clarity or awareness. You or I are going to have a moment of connection. And so that is what inspires me in my work to bring that to leaders to say, listen, let's let go of the being in control. Let's let go of the posturing and the pretend because leadership was never intended to be this performative action, right? We really do need leaders today that can actually come in and say, hey, I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what the next answer is, but I'm here for it. And we're going to figure it out. And we got the right people and we got the right team. And I know I've got the smartest people around me and we are creative and we are innovative and we've got each other's backs. That's what I'm talking about. You don't have to come in and perform that you know everything and you have it all figured out. Because how could you right now? Like we're just seeing so much happen globally, institutionally, organizationally that if somebody does actually have it all together, please put your hand up and take charge.
And usually the person who actually mostly is capable is the last person to put their hand up, right? Let me understand. There's a dynamic here about having a well-formed team, having enough safety, and then we've got each individual performer. Those things, they're not created one at a time. It's created over time. Like there's an evolution to creating that team. There is a further evolution about creating an environment where we can actually have real conversations. And then we've got the individual stepping into this new way of being. How do you navigate that dance?
Love this question. It's so, so important that we think about leadership in the context of what we're trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, the leader is not there to be in charge. The leader is there to go first, right? The leader is there to show people a way and people will follow if they trust that leader. What we need most, I believe, in leadership in 2026 is that it needs to meet fundamental human needs that we are not meeting today. And that is safety and that is belonging. And I truly believe that to the core of my being, that until we put our time and energy as leaders into safety and belonging, we are not going to get to that place because everybody wants the magic answer to employee engagement. They want the magic answer to culture. Well, I'll tell you what, it's safety and belonging. That's it.
Mhm.
That's as simple as we can make it. So how do we do it? It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but when you talk about making it okay for a team to be safe showing up and sharing ideas, that's safety, right? That's a leader that has shown the team time and time again, I'm here to listen. I respect you. I'm not going to demean you or demoralize you for your ideas. I might not always take them, might not always move forward on them, but I value hearing them. And we are better with all of those ideas being shared than with some of them being withheld. And I think that's a fundamental shift that we have to start to see in leadership is we have to invite people into the conversation by offering safety and showing them that absolutely everyone belongs, regardless of worldview, regardless of beliefs. And when those things are in conflict, and this is a thing that I work with my leaders on when I'm coaching them, is that I work specifically with women in leadership. And one of the things that I find they are most scared of is potential conflict. They're conflict avoidant. And so they don't want to invite conversations that could bring about conflict. But you know what? This is where we have to change that perception. I used to be that way. Well, now I'm like, oh, I'm so curious about that. Tell me more. What are you feeling right now? What did that make you feel? And then you learn so much about the other person because whatever triggered them, whatever that thought or that idea brought up, it's connected to something from their lived experience. And that's an opportunity to go deeper on a human level and say, I would have never thought that, but thank you for sharing that with me.
So I've got that piece that I can see it at the team level, at the individual level in small organizations. But then what I also have seen is that direct conflict in values where the quarterly profit target is more important than the individual. And that is the way the organization, I won't say it's being designed that way, but that is the way that it has become. And so I'm really curious about that delta, that gap between I can see the value and then I can see what often happens in these larger organizations. Do you have any thoughts on that gap and how do we close that gap? How do
I think what you're pointing out is a very tricky thing to navigate. I myself have been caught in that crevice. The challenge is a structural one. It's that way by design. And up until now, organizations weren't compelled to think as much about individuals. It really was, listen, we give you a job and in return you give us hard work and the payment for that is your paycheck and that's it. We're square. Well, that's not enough anymore. And really what we're seeing in terms of pushback is the masses, the people who globally, this is absolutely across the globe, they want more out of life. They want more than just a paycheck. And they're saying, I'm not willing to sacrifice my humanity for the profit and the bottom line. Now, there is an extent to which people will. And I think we have to find some harmony there. And I think it's going to take work on both sides, Candy, because it can't be all one way or all the other. And that's the tricky part. This is where the negotiation comes in and we're seeing a lot of friction. We're seeing a lot of conflict over this notion of this values divide, right? You know, is it but I truly believe that there is a collective good in making sure that people are well and people are taken care of and that, you know, leadership is about leading the team and everyone comes with you. We don't want bodies left in our wake, right? The more people that leave the organization, the more talent that drains, it actually harms the bottom line. And we need to start looking at that as well. So I think that fundamentally we have to start looking at some of these issues through different lenses and different perspectives. And quite frankly, I don't think we have all the right perspectives at the tables where these decisions are being made. And that's where I step in and I say, we have to look at this problem and say, you know, part of the solution, at least in part, is having different voices at the decision making table. And we need those voices to be heard and we need to be having these conversations. And leadership, I really would encourage listeners to think about as not something you do, but something you transmit. Every single one of us is transmitting a frequency of leadership. And what channel are you on? Because people are either with you or they're not.
Yeah, this is a massive topic, and I really appreciate all the wisdom that you've brought to it. As we get ready to wrap up, can you share how people can find out more about you and if you have a free gift that you can offer to the listeners as well?
Absolutely. So the best way to find me is LinkedIn, Sarah Doyle, and also my website, coachforsuccess.ca. And I do have a free gift that I'm happy to leave with your listeners, which is a 2-minute leadership audit that's really going to help them ascertain where they are in terms of their own leadership development, any growth edge that they could really move towards. This works not just for leaders in corporate, but leaders of all kind. I'm talking about founders and entrepreneurs as well. So it's really been developed to help you so that you can make sure that you are continuing to evolve and grow as a leader and reach that next level.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really enjoyed the conversation. I think we could have talked for 2 hours, but our time was limited. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of your wisdom with the guests.
Thank you so much for having
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this episode. I hope that you took away some thoughts, some questions, and some new perspectives about leadership and how things can change within organizations, and perhaps even how you might like to contribute to this change. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you again on the next episode. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. If this conversation resonated, take a moment to reflect on what stood out and how it connects to where you are right now. Coaching businesses grow through clarity and thoughtful choices, not pressure or hustle. If you'd like more support, you can learn more at stepintosuccessnow.com. I'll put the link in the episode notes. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would share it with a peer or colleague who would enjoy it as well. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.